Hi and welcome to On Rocky Ground. This video is just going to be concentrating on the last council meeting. Now the council meeting was quite controversial for one particular notice of motion, and what I want to do is just give you a bit of background about that and then go on to how your councillors actually responded to it. So in a nutshell, the Rockingham and Kwinana Chamber of Commerce applied for another round of grant funding. Now, this time it's come out of a different pot. It's come out of the economic development pot rather than in previous years. In fact, for the last 5 years, I think, or 4 years, it's coming out of the community development pot. And it went quite a distance. It went through the community development committee meeting before Councillor Matt Whitfield realised there was a lot of problems with the application in so much as the information that was provided was flawed. Why aren't the executive or the CEO checking these things? Is it a case of anybody can put an application in and they don't get checked? It certainly seems that way on this particular occasion. So Matt highlighted this, and the city retrospectively then gone and done the right thing. They've said, okay, we'll support a deferment until such time that the RKCC can provide genuine information. Matt Whitfield put forward an alternate notice of motion. Now that alternate notice of motion, basically, I'm not going to go into the detail of it, but basically it says to defer the RKCC application for $25,000 of ratepayers' funds for the Rockingham long table lunch on the beach. The reason why Matt put this alternate motion in was to give time for the RKCC to provide the correct information, but also give councillors time to read that correct information so they can make an informed decision. Now the officers' recommendations actually supported Matt's notice of motion. Now I'd highly recommend people actually go onto the city's website, kick back, have a beer or whatever it may be, and listen to the debate, the arguments, the discussion, whatever you want to call it, because some of the councillors' responses are bewildering. So some of the discrepancies that Matt Whitfield found, and you've got to give Matt praise here for actually having the diligence to go through it in detail and check the facts and figures. So the officer's report stated, since 2015, the Rockingham long table lunch has been sold out, which is 500 people. But in 2018, only 380 were sold. For the 2020 event, RKCC projected a $29,900 profit. Official RKCC grant acquittal after the event showed a profit of just 1,182. So I mean, they're 28 grand out. However, new figures now show a loss of $4,356. And Matt asked during his debate which of these figures are actually true. But Matt pointed out that in 2018, the RKCC requested that the application for the 2019 event be deferred, as some of the information had not been provided due to an admin error. So that's twice in successive applications that the RKCC haven't put the application in correctly with the correct figures, with the correct information. The city, Matt also stated that the city officers had also made assumptions in writing their report to council. They'd assumed some of this was right. Matt made reference to the fact that he was disappointed that some members of the RKCC and the business community in general feel that council is not supportive of the RKCC. I was shocked and stunned by that, to be honest, and I'd like to know who. Matt denied this and stated that the RKCC have more funding than any other organisation, and they certainly did while I was a councillor for 4 years that I was on council. In the last 12 months alone, the city has supported the RKCC through the following: $5,000 for annual silver membership. Yes, the city is a member of the RKCC. $5,000 to sponsor a category in the annual business awards. $20,000 towards this year's long table lunch. $1,000 towards a comedy fundraising event. $37,500 as a fee for service to run key leaders in business breakfasts. So I know when I was on council, I don't know whether it's changed, but I think the RKCC ran 4 business breakfasts a year. That was paid for by the ratepayer for them to run those events. So another $5,000 as a fee for service to run after hours events. So your after hours business events predominantly aimed at RKCC members. But in total, that was $73,500 of ratepayers' money of financial support in the last 12 months alone. And yet there are some members of the RKCC are ungrateful and think that that's not good enough. That's not supporting. What I'd like to know from these members or these people that are disgruntled with the fact that they believe they're not getting support from the city, I'd like to know, 1, who they are, 2, what support do they want? Put a figure on it, because it's, is it money, or do they want more support as in other ways? Because I'm sure somebody could put a notice of motion in to reduce the financial support and support you in other ways. Maybe it's just a little bit of marketing for you. But yeah, that is massively disappointing. In fact, it's quite offensive to your average ratepayer to know that they've got $73,500, way more than any other organisation, for grant funding from the City of Rockingham, and some people are ungrateful. They don't think it's enough. Craig Buchanan, he had his 2 penneth worth, and he stated that there's $21,000 of a black hole in the RKCC's proposal. $21,000. Alarm bells should have been going off with this proposal and the holes in it. It goes on to say, if this was coming from anybody else, we'd have thrown it in a bin and given the opportunity to resubmit. Lorna Buchan, she had a couple of good points actually. I don't see why one organisation has the option to have their application deferred. Quite clear based on historical events. If an application doesn't satisfy the proposal criteria, it's normally thrown out. But on this occasion, it's quite clear they've found that there's holes in the application, and yet it's been left to stand to go to council. She goes on to state that any other organisation that comes forward with a grant application, if they don't meet that criteria, if they do not meet the deadlines, then they are refused the grant. She said, why is it that this one organisation has to have a special situation for it? Lorna then goes on to say, it's not a large-scale event and not of a unique nature, The truth is that long table lunches occur all over WA. It is simply not iconic. It's an elite corporate lunch with no community benefit. No free admittance for any part of the event for Rockingham residents to enjoy. In fact, with tickets at $175, it's out of reach of the average resident, which makes it an elitist event at ratepayers' expense, she says. The RKCC are asking the public to subsidise the lunch, with most ratepayers being unable to afford to attend. Lorna then goes on to say the second issue for her is the budget, and she states at $25,000 sponsorship, we are subsidising every ticket to the event at $62.50 each. To pay for gourmet food and wine for people who can afford the full price of a ticket. Price the tickets properly and run the event without handouts. This is the 5th year the corporate event has come looking for handouts. That's from Lorna. Again, she goes on to say, I've questioned how much for wages, referring to the budget that is. We have a figure of $63,000 for general incidentals. She doesn't find 63,000 incidental. Somewhere in there is wages and salaries, she says. Yet we are told we use 45 volunteers on the day. I've questioned how much separately, how much for alcohol and food, and I cannot get answers, she stated. So, as you can see, Laura's quite passionate about the inadequacies of this application. She goes on saying, pointing out that 2 applications of funding for this year from Tourism Rockingham have been heavily criticised and refused because of the lack of data rationale or justification for participation. So what's the difference, she says? We move on to Councillor Deb Hamlin. Now Hamlin, she decided to do a quick Google on the definition of iconic. And some of them, meaning the definitions that is, are representative of us, she says. Now, Hamlin went on to suggest that we had the only western-facing beach in the metro area before being corrected by Samuels, our mayor, when he stated it's actually a north-facing beach. Hey-ho. Anyway, Matt's motion, believe it or not, to have this application deferred so councillors could get all the correct information and make an informed decision was lost. It was lost. So then the formal motion went up about voting for the funding. So then they had to vote for the funding. They didn't want to, or some councillors did not want to vote for that funding, but they had to now because it was on the table, because Matt's alternate motion was defeated. So when the debate started for the main notice of motion, as in should the ratepayers, should council award this money to the RKCC, and knowing full well that the application is flawed, Lord Liley, her preamble talks about investment to the foreshore, how we all want businesses to flourish, how we want to stimulate the local economy, increase employment opportunities. What better way to showcase our city than to provide suitable attractors? And most of Liley's debate misses the point. It should be self-sufficient by now. 5 years of funding that this particular event has had. Is she suggesting that the RTL, the Rockingham Long Table Lunch, be infinitely supported by ratepayers' funds? Is that what we're saying? So if it becomes an iconic event, and it's under the current economic development strategy as an iconic event, and that economic development strategy runs for up until 2025, I think, maybe 2024, does that mean that we now give $25,000 every time, every year, should the RKCC apply for it, we have to give it to them? Is that what Lee Liley is suggesting? Because I'm sort of surmising from her debate that's what it was leading to. So if we've got a finite amount of funding for economic development, which we have, if we continually give $25,000 of that funding to the same event, it actually stifles other development. It actually stifles economic development. Why would you continue to fund the same event? Why would you do that? So Lee Liley also suggests that 20 cents from each ratepayer, which is what this funding amounts to, 20 cents, will gain 5 people employment. What, for a day or permanently? She didn't quite make it clear on that. 5 people of employment for the day of the event. I don't get it. I really didn't get her point on this one at all. Gaining 5 people of employment. If you run any event and you're deciding to pay people, you will get people in and they will be employed for the day. But it's not giving them any kind of guarantees of future employment. But she was willing to give her 20 cents worth. That is, to me, a very, very weak point. She also wrongly suggested everyone can go to it. Well, they can't, because it has a capacity. If you've got 500 tickets and you've only got 500 tickets, then not everybody can go to it. That stands to reason. So I didn't quite get Lee Liley's view at all on that one. And then we move back to good old Hamlin. Deb Hamlin. She states, I know this is seen by some as funding the RKCC, but it's about funding tourism and economic development and rediscovering Rockingham. As a city, we get so much exposure via TV and other media, it is so well worth it. I think maybe Deborah Hamlin might be missing a point here, quite a valid point that is. They get TV exposure regardless of whether we gave them whether council awarded ratepayer funding towards this event. They get TV coverage regardless. They brag about it every year. Look at how much TV rights we get. Is anybody suggesting that we wouldn't get TV or social media coverage for the Rockingham Long Table Lunch if we didn't give them 25,000 of ratepayers' money? Hamlin goes on further to say our strategic community plan, aspiration 1 that is, within the plan, is to host events and attractions that will entice residents and visitors throughout the year. Our tourism strategy states that we will support and promote third-party events. Yes, but there's other ways to support and promote third-party events. It doesn't have to be funding, especially if the event is making a profit. We don't know whether it's making a profit because no one knows, because we haven't got the correct figures yet. It's either making, according to Matt Whitfield, it's either making a nigh on 30 grand profit. If it is, why do you need 25 grand of ratepayers funding if it's making 30 grand profit? If it's only making 1,800 or whatever it was that Matt said earlier, after 5 years of funding, you've got to change your strategy. You've got to change the way that you plan things, where you run things, or bin it all together as a flop, as a failure. But you don't just keep flogging a dead horse. And if it's making a loss after 5 years, you've got to look at it. You've got to look at it and concede defeat, or put another dimension into the event, reinvigorate it, and come up with some robust planning to make sure it does make money. If something's based on, you know what an event will cost because you get quotes from suppliers, from vendors, and you're selling tickets, the only risk is how many tickets you sell. That's it. Is there a suggestion here that the ratepayer must now pay the RKCC every year throughout the life cycle of the Strategic Community Plan? Because that's, according to Deb Hamlin, that's part and parcel of the Strategic Community Plan, Aspiration 1, to host events and attractions. So is that now committing the ratepayer to a 5-year term of paying for the long table lunch? Matt then stated he was disappointed the deferral didn't go through. He said basically we have to make a decision based on incorrect information, and I don't think that is sound, according to Matt. He goes on to state for the 2021 long table lunch, the scale and budgets are decreasing. At the same time, the RKCC are actually asking for more funding from the city. In the officer's report, Matt states, the event will bring in an extra $139,000 into the economy. That's $139,000, which is good, he states. The figure is dwarfed by other events that take place in the city, which have also applied for $20,000 funding, so less funding. Matt goes on to provide examples of other events that bring in millions of dollars to the local economy. He also stated it doesn't make economic sense and it's not consistent with amounts we have given out to other people. So according to Matt, there's lots of inconsistencies with the way that we're awarding this funding or awarding funding. Matt goes on to say that the cash contribution from the RKCC towards this event, in 2019, it was $21,000. That's what the RKCC put in as cash. In 2020, it went down to $19,000. But this current application has not listed any cash contribution at all, which is very interesting. Matt goes on to say the organisation can afford to make a cash contribution. He also states this year's event is going to be scaled down with less food, and that's why ticket prices are reduced. Yet the city has been asked to contribute twice as much as when the original event took place. So it seems, on what Matt's stating there, is that the event is relying more heavily on ratepayers because the costs are going down, but the request for funding is going up. Matt summarises. Information for 2020 ticket sales shows that 25% of attendees were attracted from out of the area, 25%. So that's between 50 and, say, 80 people. More money is being requested at a time when the event is going to cost less. There are no cash contributions made by the organisation this year. This iconic sellout event did not sell out, and many people are of the view that it is mainly members of the RKCC who attend. He also, his final point on his summary is that this event only attracted a maximum of 100 people into Rockingham last year. I don't think it's fair, he said. I don't think it's reasonable. We are going to be making a decision based on false information. It's just not right. I have no choice but to vote against it. So the debate then goes to Joy Stewart. Now, Joy, she voted actually against the original motion that went to the Community Development Committee. Now, that's only on a recommendation basis, okay? Interesting to note that if you have an interest to declare, you cannot vote at the committee level and that committee level is based on a recommendation. But bizarrely enough, it's perfectly legal to go to council and vote for the decision, irrespective of that you can't do it at committee level, which is quite bizarre. And we had two people, according to the agenda, we had two people, Samuels, who's a life member of the RKCC, and Hayley Edwards. She, according to the minutes, according to the agenda, she has a partner that is associated with the RKCC as a member with his company. So, yeah, two people had interestingly declared it, which is perfectly fine, but it is a good point to note. So, Joy voted against it, and interestingly enough, she voted against Matt Whitfield's alternate motion to have it deferred, because she stated, "I don't believe it will make much difference to my debate." She went on to say, "I declared that if she found that the majority of these small business owners and residents supported it, I'd be changing my vote," she said. She went on to say that she visited all the small businesses along Rockingham Beach Road, moving through to Railway Terrace, Parking Street and Kent Street. And to her surprise, all bar one business owners praised the event. I've got to say, if you're going to base your decision on walking along Rocky Beach Road, along Parking, up Railway and on Kent Street to see those businesses, those are businesses that, a few of them, I don't know how many, but I'm pretty sure quite a few of them, one are either members of the RKCC or who like events on the beach because it's right on their doorstep and they may be able to cash in on something, I don't know. But my issue with that is, did she go down to Baldivis to see the local electrician? Did she visit the local plumber in Port Kennedy? Or did she go and see another one-man band, maybe down in Secret Harbour? Business does not centre around Rocky Foreshore. I just want to give the viewers an idea of the situation as far as business is concerned. According to the officer's report, there's just under 5,600 businesses, I think, in Rockingham, of which 330 are members of the RKCC. That's around 5-6%. To suggest that getting a view of business either from a minute selection of people on the foreshore, around the foreshore area, or from just members of the RKCC is not right. It's that particular sample is too small. You're not taking a sample from business, because business, there's nearly 6,000 businesses, 5,600 businesses in Rockingham. So to get a few, for Joy to walk around saying, yes, I went to see a few and they overwhelmingly said, yes, we really support it, and base your decision on that is a little bit narrow-minded for me. In my opinion, if you're going to do some kind of research, do it properly. Get out there, go and see businesses, go and speak to businesses that aren't members of the RKCC and why they're not. I suppose that's probably a job for the CEO of the RKCC. Why does he lose the amount of people he does each year? So Joy clearly stated that the RKCC represents the interest of business in the community in the Southwest Metropolitan Corridor. Represents the interest of businesses. I would beg to differ that, in my opinion, they represent the interests of their members, not of businesses. Businesses is suggesting they represent at least the 5,600 of businesses in Rockingham. I think there's a lot of businesses in Rockingham that would suggest otherwise. Joy then goes on to suggest that the strategy, and I'm assuming it's the economic development strategy that she's talking about, that council agreed upon, was that we support the principle of holding iconic events in Rockingham, of which the RKCC are trying to build. Yes, support the principle of holding them. So what's that got to do with the $25,000 application? I don't think there are many people that wouldn't support, in principle, the holding of any iconic event on Rockingham should it increase or develop the economy. But one, there's no data to suggest that it has developed the economy. Unlike when Matt Whitfield mentioned earlier, the Rockingham Beach Cup, which is a brilliant event, that is iconic because it's not done anywhere else. They actually paid a company to produce that data for them, so they could go to the city and say, actually, this is exactly what the benefits of this particular event. Now, that was done brilliantly. They've got a fantastic strategy, if I don't mind saying so myself, and the management of the event is done by volunteers. And next up was Craig Buchanan. Craig started his debate by saying, I'm flabbergasted, councillors. So was I, to be fair, when I listened to it. When I listened to the council meeting, that is, not Craig's answer. He goes on to state that we actually have councillors sitting around this table talking about governance and good governance, yet who appear to be proposing that we vote in favour of a motion which we have been told and we have confirmed to the best of our knowledge is based on flawed and inaccurate data. That's what Craig stated. He goes on to state, now are we honestly saying that that doesn't matter? Are we saying that we'll take it on trust? A nod and a wink is good enough to a blind horse? So Craig's view was pretty clear on that people are talking about good governance and we're here to do this and we're here to do that, but you're quite happy to make a decision based on data that you know that councillors all knew was flawed. Hayley Edwards then went on saying 25,000 for infrastructure. In return, we are included in all advertising and awareness campaigns, including Destination WA. That was already on the cards. And it's got nothing to do with infrastructure. If we're paying for the infrastructure, what's Destination WA got to do with that? Which has a substantial return on investment. And this isn't even touching the local economic benefit our city sees. So how is she quantifying this return on investment, this substantial return on investment? So she's come out with a comment there saying, oh, you know, it's which has a substantial return on investment. Where? Where is it? Show us this substantial return on investment. Prove it. I haven't seen anything. I certainly didn't see anything as a councillor where it stated, where it could absolutely could prove that it had any benefit to Rockingham. It was anecdotal. So, can she quantify the local economic benefit our city sees? As Councillor Whitford pointed out, the Rockingham Beach Cup organisers have produced proof of benefit to the local economy. So you do get, I think it's run by the Rotary, the Rockingham Beach Cup, and they did everything. They got money from the city, and that's proven to be an absolute success. It's for everybody. It isn't limited to 500 people. It's the only thing that limits people turning up is the size of Rockingham. So yes, it is iconic. Yes, it is absolutely well worth supporting. Yes, it is open to everybody. And yes, they can prove the benefits to the local economy. Now, incredibly, for me anyway, Edwards goes on to say she understands where Councillor Whitfield's alternate motion with the anomalies, as in to defer it, that have been found in the report, but that would not change my support, she states. Councillor Edwards then goes on, she lists the marketing opportunity for the city, which includes city logo on all print and promotional materials, website, social media, all print advertising, print editorials, email banners, logos, event signage, event programmes, major sponsorship banner, a 5-minute speech from the mayor or his representative, and access to professional photography. She goes on to say that the argument I've heard that this event isn't inclusive is completely moot. That's what Hayley Edwards stated. The inclusive argument from some councillors is a poor attempt to discredit the importance of our city supporting an event like this. So is she accusing councillors of discrediting the city? I'll read it to you again. The inclusive argument from some councillors is also a poor attempt to discredit the importance of our city supporting an event like this. She also went on, this is Hayley Edwards, she also went on to emphasise the misinformed rhetoric around the previous community grants funding that the RKCC had previously received. Misinformed rhetoric. previous community grants, she states, the RKCC has received is completely irrelevant to this application and should not even be brought up. That's what she said. So if you, I don't know, if you've got an organisation that's had more grant funding than any other organisation, we shouldn't take that into consideration. Should it not be at least discussed and taken into consideration? Absolutely, in my opinion, it should, yes. She goes on to say she's quite clearly a supporter of the RKCC. We have a highly active chamber in Rockingham who has consistently applied for grants and been successful in doing so. That's correct. Regardless of councillors' personal opinion of the RKCC, which seems to be the major issue here, let me make that very clear, she states. She also goes on to say, it is not our place as elected members to say what, where, why and how a non-for-profit organisation in our region should run, whether it is effective or not, whether it's representative or not, or even criticise the membership base. It's none of our business, she states. Well, actually, I disagree with that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will disagree with that statement, because if any organisation is applying for funding, ratepayer funding from the City of Rockingham, we need to make sure that they are operating effectively. What happens if they're not? We have had instances in the past where organisations have had to be looked at because they haven't been run effectively. To suggest otherwise, incredible. It's incredulous to think that Councillor Edwards' view on this is it shouldn't even be taken into consideration. It's none of our business. So just to sort of analyse what Edwards has said here. Firstly, she's made it very clear that some councillors have got some adverse personal opinions towards the RKCC. I don't know if that's true or not. It would be interesting to know which councillors have, if there are any. She's made it clear, regardless of councillors' personal opinions of the RKCC, which seems to be the major issue here. So hypothetically, if we have a not-for-profit and it isn't run effectively, does that mean it's not a council's business and it should not be part of council's consideration for awarding funding? It's part of a councillor's role to provide good governance, and that is to make sure if we're giving funding to anybody, it's spent correctly and that organisation is being run effectively and properly in the first instance. So then we move on to Sally Davis. Again, quite remarkable. She said, I do have concerns about the inaccuracies in the paperwork. She goes on to say that it's really unfortunate that that's happened and there is a problem with the paperwork in this event. And it is good governance to follow up on that. Well, if it is good governance to follow up on that, why is she voting to give the money when she knows that the information is flawed? That didn't make any sense to me. So yes, we should be following up on it, and it should have been deferred until that information was followed up on, and then you could have made a decision. Lorna Buchan. Now Lorna, and this is for the main notice of motion to give the RKCC the money. Lorna says there is no evidence of the economic contribution. It says so in the report. It's an inadequate budget, she stated. The figures don't stack up. We even have a ghost event running on Sunday that's not included on here, she states, which is bizarre. We, as in the council, are charged with the effective and efficient spending of funds. Now, that's probably more relevant than maybe Hayley Edwards suggesting it's none of our business. Lorna then goes on to state that we have an inappropriate donation listed as an expense. So the councillors that did vote in favour for this, irrespective of the fact that they were fully informed that the facts and figures that were presented to them were flawed, they still voted in favour. And there were Samuels, Hamblin, Liley, Stewart, Edwards and Davis. 6 councillors voted in favour of this. I'm of the opinion it should have been deferred to at least give the RKCC time to produce those figures. I think everybody wants the RKCC to run the event, get as many events going as possible. I agree with that. But to perpetually fund something, especially if it makes a profit, then effectively ratepayers' funds are used that will go into that profit. So, with any particular event, you look at your expenses. From those expenses, you then look at your revenue, as in your ticket sales. Then you can ascertain whether you've got a profit or a loss. It's pretty simple, really. Then, from that profit or loss, I should say, you then look at, let's have a look at my event. Does it equal a profit? If it does, then that money goes to your annual revenue or your profit for your business. Your ratepayers grant funding doesn't actually go to the event, it just adds to the profit of the annual revenue of the particular organisation. So let's take another look. We've got an event and it equals a loss. Therefore, ratepayers grant funding should not be used for a particular loss. So, yeah, very shocked. I really do encourage anybody to get on the city's website, go to council meetings, and go to the minutes and look at the recorded minutes and just press play and just listen to it. Kick back with a beer or a glass of wine and just listen to what's going on. You'll be shocked. The tone of some councillors was quite remarkable. Please listen to it. It's your council and make your voice heard. If you agree or disagree with this, then get all your councillors and tell them. Thanks for listening. Take care.